You are listening to Democracy Now!, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The author is Gore Vidal, one of the most prolific and best-known writers in the United States. He's written more than 22 books. A collection of his essays won the National Book Award. Gore Vidal is the author most recently of Perpetual War for Perpetual Peace and his book, Dreaming War. Writing in The Scotsman, critic Gavin Esler called Perpetual War the finest serious critique of America's use and abuse of power in the 21st century that I have read. Well, last week I had the chance to sit down with Gore Vidal in his hotel room in New York. We're going to play that interview for you. I asked him where he was on September 11, 2001.
The United States is not a normal country. We're a homeland now, under military surveillance and military control. The President asked the Congress right after 9/11 not to conduct a major investigation as it might deter our search for terrorism, wherever it may be in the world. So Congress obediently rolled over. There was, I remember Pearl Harbor. I was a kid then. And within 3 years of it, I had enlisted in the Army. That's what we did in those days. We did not go off to the Texas Air Force and hide. I realized the country has totally changed, that the government is not responsive to the people, either in protecting us from something like 9/11, which they should have done, could have done, did not do, and then when it did happen, to investigate. So I wrote 2 little books, one called Perpetual War for Perpetual Peace, in which I try to go into the why. Osama bin Laden, if it were he or whoever it was, why it was done. Then I wrote another one, Dreaming War, on why we were not protected at 9/11, which ordinarily would have led to the impeachment of the President of the United States, who had allowed it to happen. They said they had no information. Since then, every day, the New York Times prints another mountain of people who said they had warned the government. They had warned the government. President Putin of Russia, he had warned us. President Mubarak of Egypt, he had warned us. 3 members of Mossad claimed that they had come to the United States to warn us that sometime in September, something unpleasant might come out of the sky in our direction. Were we defended? No, we were not defended. Has this ever been investigated? No, it hasn't. There was some attempt at the midterm election. There was a pro forma committee in Congress, which has done nothing thus far. What are we, 3 years later? This is shameful. The media, which is controlled by the great conglomerates, which control the political system, has done an atrocious job of reporting, though sometimes good stories get in. I've worn my eyes out studying the Wall Street Journal, which, despite its dreadful editorial policies, is a pretty good newspaper of record, which the New York Times is not. If you read the Wall Street Journal very carefully, you can pretty much figure out what happened that day. At the time of the first hijacking, according to law, FAA, it is mandatory within 4 minutes of a hijacking, fighter planes from the nearest air base, military base, go up to scramble. That means go up and force the plane down, find out who they are, find out what's happening. For 1 hour and 50 minutes, I think it was, no fighter plane went up. During that hour and 20 minutes, we lost the 2 towers and 1 side of the Pentagon. Why didn't they go up? No description from the government, no excuse. A lot of mumbling stories which were then retracted and new stories replaced them. That, to me, was the end of the Republic. We no longer had a Congress which would ask questions, which it was supposed in place to do, of the executive. We have a commander-in-chief who likes strutting around in military uniform, which no previous commander-in-chief ever did, as they're supposed to be civilians, keeping charge of the military. This thing is surrealistic now, and it is getting nastier and nastier. as we are more and more kept in the dark about those things which most affect us, which are war and peace, prosperity and poverty. These are the main things that a government should look after, and we, the people, should be told about. We have been told nothing, and every voice is silent. So I wrote 2 little books, which were then noticed by people who like to look at the internet, and then a few 100,000 people have bought them. And I don't come out with conspiracy theories. I never became a journalist. I'm a historian. Because journalists give you their opinions and pretend they're facts. I don't give you my opinions because they may be valuable to my mother, but they're of no value to anybody else. They may be of value to me. But I give the facts as I find them, and I list them, and they're quite deadly. This government is culpable of, if nothing less, negligence. Why were we not protected? With all the air bases, fighter planes up and down the eastern seaboard, not one of them went aloft while the hijackings took place. Finally, 2 from Otis Field in Massachusetts arrived at the Twin Towers. I think at the time the second one was hit. If anybody had been thinking, they would have gone on to Washington to try and prevent the attack on the Pentagon. They went back to Otis, back to Massachusetts. So I ask these questions, which Congress should ask, does not ask, which the press should ask, but is too frightened. It's a reign of terror now.
A recent expose shows that even the congressional committee that's looking into this can't get a hold of documents that are classified, and even public testimony is now being reclassified.
Well, isn't it pretty clear that the dictatorship is in place? We're not supposed to know certain things, and we're not going to know them. They're doing everything to remove our history. They've damaged the Freedom of Information Act. Bush managed to have a number of presidential papers, including those of his father, put out of reach of historians or anybody for a great length of time, during which they will probably be shredded, so they will never be available. And what I've always called, jokingly, the United States of amnesia will be worse than an amnesiac. It'll be have suffered a lobotomy. There will be no functioning historical memory of our history.
How has George Bush accrued so much power?
Well, the election of 2000 was the end of the Republic. It was the second time it had happened that somebody who got the popular vote didn't get the election. 1876, when Governor Tilden, the Democrat of New York, won the election. But they were able, we still had troops in the South, they were able to turn the election around in the Electoral College. Tilden didn't want another civil war, so he just withdrew. But there was no sinister group taking charge. It was just a party group of Republicans who wanted to continue the reign of General Grant. That was mildly sleazy. This is major corruption. This is corporate America as one putting in place a president who was not elected, getting the Supreme Court to delay and delay, when under the 10th Amendment, every decision about the voting in Florida should be made by the Florida Supreme Court, not the U.S. Supreme Court, which the Constitution rules out in matters of election.
So how did that happen? And how did, well, isn't he your relative, Al Gore?
Well, it's nothing I go through the streets boasting of, no. But yes, he's my cousin. And very un-Gore. The Gores are very known for their belligerency. And he is not known for self-defense, let us say. He should have asked. It's easy to say he should have, but it was pretty clear at the time I would have, had I been in that situation. Count the total Florida vote. He has every right to demand that. And they couldn't have played games because it's too big a vote. Instead, he asked, I think, 3 counties, Dade and Broward and one other, to do their count over again.
Concerned that he wouldn't win outside of those.
No, I think he figured that he had won those. Dade is certainly a large minority vote, which had all voted for him. There's a wonderful book by Nichols called Jews for Buchanan. It's a marvelous shot of four Jewish gentlemen looking terribly alarmed, and you see Dade County goes for Buchanan. Even Buchanan said, look, these were not my votes down there, something's wrong. And it was stolen by the Secretary of State, that lady who has now been rewarded with a seat in Congress, the president's brother, the losing president candidate's brother, was governor, and he took part in it. And the court did by 5-4. 2 of the 5 should have recused themselves, should have just withdrawn from the case when Gore versus Bush came before the court. Why? One of them, Scalia, had a son who was working for the Bush team of lawyers before the Supreme Court. Does Justice Scalia recuse himself, as he should, because his son is arguing? No. He wants to kill Gore. He wants to make sure that the bad guys win. Thomas' wife was busy getting curricula vitae of potential people to serve in a Bush administration. Clarence Thomas should have recused himself and withdrawn from the case. In which case, it would have been 4-3 for Gore, who would now be president, and Iraq and Afghanistan, I could guarantee, would not have been knocked down in order to benefit Halliburton and Bechtel.
Antonin Scalia recently went to Cleveland. He spoke at the Cleveland City Club, which is known as the oldest free speech forum in the country. He allowed no press in. And the night before, he spoke in the city, and he said that that vote, choosing George Bush, was his proudest moment.
I would impeach him. And in a well-run country, the Senate should make a movement toward the impeachment of, the trial of, anyway, of Justice Scalia. And back of that, there's some interesting organization going on, which is hard to determine. Opus Dei. Both Scalia and Thomas have connections with Opus Dei, which is a secret Catholic order, originally fascist. General Franco in Spain was a sort of godfather to it. And we don't know much about it. And it's all over the place, about 80,000 worldwide. Louis Freeh of the FBI at that time was a member, as was Mr. Hansen, the spy, who'd been giving all of our secrets to the, he was with the CIA. He'd been giving our secrets to the Russians for many years. I make no charges, but I simply bring up questions. Why not ask questions of these people? Does it suit Opus Dei that Bush is president? Now we're getting into God territory, which I normally would stay away from, as any good American should. It's not my business, other people's religions. But Bush is born again. That's why he uses biblical language. He's evil, he evildoer. Well, that's theological language. You can say he's a bad man, he's a dishonest man, ruthless man, evildoer. And he believes the end of the world is coming. He's born-agains believe in rapture. They don't care about this world. When it ends, he's going to be lifted up. George W. Bush will be lifted up in a state of rapture into the bosom of our Lord. Also, among the born-again category, though not that kind of Protestant, is Tony Blair, who has become, like his wife, Roman Catholic, which is difficult for a British Prime Minister, since the Prime Minister is supposed to be an Anglican, what we would call an Episcopalian, as he picks the bishops for the Anglican Church. So you can't have a Roman Catholic picking Anglican bishops. But he is. So now we have 2 boys who think that Jesus wants them for sunbeams, who are willing to put at risk. I'm extrapolating on my own just from the evidence at hand. This is mostly humorous. You can judge it as you may. but two believers in our Lord's coming, and Armageddon, and the end of the world. This is the way Ronald Reagan used to talk, and made him very popular in the southern states. That's why the big thing was just now about South Carolina. That's the heart of it. Why? Well, those states don't have much in the way of population, but they have very strong, born-again, evangelical Christians, Protestants, and they believe in our Lord returning at any moment. And if you can collect them all by saying you hate abortion and this and that, they are the swing vote in those states because of the Electoral College. They don't have much population, but they have a lot of electoral votes among them. The Electoral College was devised. You call yourself democracy. You're very un-American. The Founding Fathers did not want democracy in the United States ever. They also did not want tyranny, a king or a Hitler. They wanted a republic. And they devised the Electoral College so the majority could never control anything. So you have a popular vote out there. In those days it was just for Congress. Then there was one electoral vote per congressman, one per senator in the state, and some other officials. And they get together and decide the election. So what Scalia was doing is he was going back to the Electoral College in order to put together a majority to put in his candidate, who will probably hasten the end of the world. I don't know where Scalia will be during rapture. He may be, or he may be.
He pointed up and then pointed down. Gore Vidal, essayist and historian, author of Dreaming War. We'll be back with him in a minute.